Call it the revenge of the General Counsel. It's General Counsels getting together from major companies that dictate who's going to get the legal work, and they're cutting off all of those dozens of firms like Paul Weiss and Kirkland and Ellis and Sidley and Austin and Skadden Arps and Wilkie Farr that settled and appeased Donald Trump by giving him $1 billion of free legal services. Now major corporations their legal departments run by General Counsel are fighting back and taking away work and punishing those law firms. We have reporting of a whole group of female generals counsel. I think it's actually general counsels when we put it that way, getting together and deciding they're not going to give work because they control it to these firms, because these firms didn't stand. They didn't fight. They sacrificed their oath as professionals, as lawyers, to be zealous advocates. They sacrificed it, and now they're losing tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that are now going to other firms that did fight. I'm Michael Popok. We're fighting here on Legal AF. I once worked in an office of a general counsel as a deputy general counsel. I know how these things work. I was the global head of litigation for a company, and I know who directs legal work. It's the office of the general counsel. The owners of the company very rarely directed, if ever, what law firm should be used. It was up to the lawyers to make that decision, and lawyers are fighting back, and the general counsels are fighting back. We have reporting out of the Wall Street Journal that Brooke Cuccinella, who is the general counsel for Citadel, a major player on Wall Street, in a way that Donald Trump and the others in his administration never were. She works for Citadel, run by and owned by Ken Griffin. She said that she's looking for law firms that aren't aligned with Donald Trump and didn't decide to bow down. She wants law firms that are going to fight for her and fight for her client. And she's taking business away from those who won't. 11 major corporations from Oracle to McDonald's to Microsoft are taking work away and transferring it to law firms that didn't settle with Donald Trump. They're voting with their feet. Appeasement didn't work in the 1930s, and appeasement doesn't work now. There was a roundtable. There was a women's general counsel event in which they said they were going to pull, for instance, the target then was Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss, the first law firm to settle. But that gave Donald Trump the taste he needed. And he and Stephen Miller went after all the other law firms. And Paul Weiss settling stuck in the craw of all the women general counsels at the event. And then it turns out, I'll give you some examples. Kirkland and Ellis, who was one of the law firms that settled, one of the 14 law firms, they wanted to get some protection in large numbers. They were actually lobbying, according to new reporting in the Wall Street Journal, they were lobbying other law firms to join them in bending the knee to Donald Trump, hoping they would be protected in numbers. You're not. We see you. Kirkland and Ellis. Latham and Watkins, a firm I know well, they represented my client in a couple of matters, and I like them as a firm, but I don't like what they did any more than I like my own original firm, Skadden Arps, and what they did. Microsoft is pulling all of its business from Latham and Watkins. And I'm talking about tens of millions of dollars that are being pulled out. The Sullivan and Cromwell, listen to this. I thought it was odd that Sullivan and Cromwell and a guy named Rob Giaffra was hired by Donald Trump to handle the appeal of his 34-count felony conviction, for instance. And he created a whole problem within his firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, because they're like, why are we representing Donald Trump? And more to the point, why was Rob Giaffra, who runs the firm, why was he negotiating on behalf of Paul Weiss to try to cut a deal with Donald Trump in the first place? And now the new reporting comes out that Giaffra was telling people within Sullivan Cromwell at the same time he was negotiating to bring Paul Weiss closer to Donald Trump, that all of those executive orders that Donald Trump issued to make these law firms radioactive and say they can't get business for the federal government, they can't do business in front of the federal government, costing these firms hundreds of millions of dollars collectively, that they were unconstitutional and would never be supported in a court of law. Then why are you representing Paul Weiss? When reached for comment, the White House said, we didn't realize that was his position. So if these firms, 14 of them, that got together to try to head off being made, in their view, radioactive, thought that they were going to salvage their client base. The opposite is happening. That's why these 11 major companies like Oracle and Microsoft and McDonald's have all gotten together and said, pull the business. And it's being led not only by general counsel, but female general counsels, which I think is important here. That they're standing up in a profiling courage and they're voting with their feet and redirecting traffic as to attorney's fees. The four major firms that went and actually challenged rather than settle have all been rewarded for their courage. Perkins Coie, Wilmer Hale, Sussman Gottfried, Jenner and Block. If you want to put a poster up in your kid's bedroom of superheroes, it's those law firms. And they are talking about the lawsuits in which they've won already up to the preliminary and permanent injunction stage with judges, including Judge Bates and Judge Beryl Howell and others, Judge Contreras, Judge Leon, in DC. They're being rewarded for being zealous advocates. Look, Judge Beryl Howell, when she ruled in favor of one of the law firms, she said, you have an ethical oath. What client could ever look you in the eye ever again and believe you're going to fight for their interests with zealous advocacy, without compromise, unyielding, knowing that you settled with the federal government? Who would hire you to go fight against the federal government? That's what Microsoft is saying. We got antitrust matters. We're in front of the federal government all the time. We don't want to go with somebody that's in bed with the federal government and is worried about what Donald Trump thinks of them. This is the payback. We're in payback era, payback season, and I'm here for it. And so are you. I'm so glad you are here. Look, we're doing great together here on Legal AF. We're talking truth to each other in order to talk truth to power. Take a moment, hit the subscribe button. That helps us build this network together. It signals to me the type of content that you want as I continue to onboard some amazing talent. We just added It's Complicated on as a new podcast. We've got the Court of History, the Court Accountability Action. We've got Shan Wu. We've got a whole group of amazing contributors along with me here on Legal AF. Take a moment though, and we're continuing to build to 700,000 before the summer's over. Hit the subscribe button. And then come over to Legal AF, the Substack, where we've got all the filings from all the cases we talk about sitting there for your review. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.